Right, I'm going to try and give a breakdown of UFC Nashville, which is going to be bloody hard because you guys are watching this because I assume you watched what I watched. And how the fuck are you going to break that down? You know, all week going into this card, I was thinking about, I've got to make a video. I've got to make a video talking about this card. This is actually a good card. I'm looking forward to this card. But the more I was looking at the predictions and how I think the card was going to go, I started to realize that this is a good card, but there is nothing really that exciting about this card. It's just going to be another fun UFC fight night. And I was struggling deeply with how am I going to talk about this card and what makes this card exciting. And there was really nothing that was going to make this card exciting. We sort of just knew that Sandhagen was going to go in there and beat the piss out of Rob Font because Rob Font was coming in on short notice. Rob Font was only a boxer. Sandhagen was a far better boxer than Rob Font was going to be. And it was just sort of going to be one of those main events that we saw coming up. The co-main event, I didn't find that interesting. There wasn't that much chatter about the co-main event. And then the rest of the card was sort of like, we know what's going to happen here. Nzechukwu is probably going to lose. And he did. But that main event was so much worse than we could have imagined. What we all thought was going to happen is that Corey Sandhagen was going to go in there and beat up Rob Font, okay? We thought Rob Font was going to leave looking like the Elephant Man. We all, like, if I'd come on and been like, all right, guys, here's my prediction coming up. It's going to be Corey Sandhagen via TKO in the 4th or the 5th round. No, everyone would have been like, yeah, obviously, Doug. Obviously, good take. And you know what? Instead, we were surprised in the worst kind of way. Sandhagen still won, so nothing shocked us on that end of things. But he won in such openly boring fashion that he had to apologize to the fans for it. He won in such a boring fashion that Michael Bisping talked about how boring the fight was. Now, guys, I do not hate grappling because it's grappling. In fact, there were some grappling situations that happened throughout this card that I'm actually going to bring up and talk about in this video because I found them to be quite interesting grappling situations and they told us a lot about the fighter and their career going forward. Sandhagen's grappling was not that kind of grappling. It was wet blanket Dagestani grappling. The worst kind of grappling out there. It wins fights, but it doesn't lay on enough damage to hurt your opponent. Like, I don't think Font was even bleeding by the end of that fight. It doesn't really damage your opponent, but it just nulls everything that your opponent does that obviously you get the win. Like, Sandhagen truly became the Sandman tonight. He put us all to sleep. Watching that main event, I fell into a deeper sleep than Jeremiah Wells fell into when he got submitted. And his legs were literally trembling. I actually think Jeremiah Wells has long-term brain damage now. We're going to get to that fight. We're going to get to that fight, all right? Trust me, we'll get to it. But this Sandhagen fight, oh my God. Okay, fine. Guys, well done, Sandhagen. You added another layer to your game. Okay, good work. But the layer that you've added is not going to get you to a pay-per-view, which is something that I found incredibly frustrating. This was like 25 minutes of me just getting pissed off. And the more I think about it, the more pissed off that I get because he needs to show that he has layers and he needs to show that he's progressing as a fighter so that he eventually gets the title shot. This was not it. This is the kind of fight that puts you up there with Bilal Muhammad. Yeah, you deserve a title shot, but the UFC is actually trying to make money, and that's not how you get one. It's the kind of performance that puts you right up there with Ankalaev. Like, yeah, you deserve a title shot, but unless you clearly win one, we're not giving you one because we like to make money. And Corey Sandhagen had just started to win himself a lot of fans. Everyone here, everyone this weekend was backing Sandhagen going into the fight. And I don't know how you come out with a win, but with less fans. And this is the problem with that style. It wins you fights, but it just halts your career. And now that entire division is filled with Merab Dvalishvili, who's going to throw takedowns. Aldo, who's going to backpack ride. And what, now the new contender is Santa? We just got away from these lower divisions getting completely deleted in the UFC. We can't come back here, guys. We literally can't afford to come back here, guys. My brother was finally back in the country and we were watching these fights together live here in these chairs. And when the fight started and the grappling started, I was like, here we go. We're going to see some awesome grappling and counter grappling. And then it just started to lull us into a bored sleep. It was that bad. And that is what's going to kill the division. And I call my brother the filthy casual because he is a filthy, like the whole time that fight was over, he was messaging other mates being like, when is Diaz starting? Like, when are we actually going to get to some interesting boxing? Which, you know, UFC lost tonight. Like, I'm not going to get into the Jake Paul, Nate Diaz thing. I'm probably going to make another video on that. And, you know, if you're like, oh, that wasn't an MMA thing, I'm here for the MMA. At least there was something there. At least it was a fight. There was actually more submission attempts in Diaz Paul than there was in the Corey Sandhagen fight. I'm not even kidding. I'm kidding a little bit, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, Sandhagen wins in devastatingly boring fashion. Rob Font, that really hurts his career. Like, he was looking up towards title contention, and now the game plan, the blueprint is very clearly laid out. Like, if you want to know what to do with Rob Font, very simple. All you have to do is throw in a bit of grappling, and the dude has no answers at all. Sandhagen, what's next? You know, if Aldo wins and he moves up to go fight Volkanovski, then pretty much there's going to be a title fight between Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili for the vacant title. If Sean O'Malley wins, you could have made an argument that it should be Corey Sandhagen going up next, but fuck Corey Sandhagen. Like, we need to punish, but like we're punishing Bilal Muhammad, we need to punish Corey Sandhagen for putting on that kind of a performance. I get it, you get the win. It's an easy win. But dude, how are you going to sell pay-per-views after that kind of fight? Like, Corey Sandhagen doesn't have much of a personality. He's a nice guy. He's a likable guy, but he's not like a Sean Strickland, Colby Covington, Israel Adesanya, someone that's going to sell fights. You know what I mean? He's just a nice dude that nobody hates. So you need to at least have an exciting fighting style. And Corey Sandhagen, with his flying knees and creative striking, he had that fighting style that could sell a fight. It made him a fight night main event. But now, man, you've fucked up. You've fucked your career now, mate. You like, that was such an annoying performance. Dana is going to be pissed off, especially tonight, because Jake Paul and Nate Diaz just did a full 10 rounds of a fun, exciting, competitive, not competitive, but a fun fight. It's actually worth going back and re-watching that fight. That's the business that we were doing tonight. We were doing business tonight against MMA Nate Diaz, Jake Paul in a boxing match. That's what we were doing. And you put us to sleep and out-wrestled them for 25 minutes. Bad. Salty. I'm salty about it. Anyway, let's move on. Another fight that I did want to talk about, Carlston Harris versus Jeremiah Wells. Now, at first, I was just going to talk about, let's just cut Carlston Harris. He doesn't deserve to be in the UFC. His ground game was bad. His feet game was bad. He was swinging at air. But he ended up getting the win. You were easily winning that fight in a boring way. And then you dropped the ball. I don't want to see you fight again. Like, ever. And Carlston Harris, yeah, you won, but it was like a Hail Mary win in the last moments. Thank God the way that the submission went down was actually interesting, because that sort of saved it, in my opinion. Otherwise, both of them, man, why? And like, who is teaching Carlston Harris how to strike? He literally is. Dominic Cruz was talking about how he was standing out of kicking range, and then Harris would just start throwing jabs and swinging. And it's like, mate, you're so far away. What are you going for? And then because he was over swinging, he was easily getting thrown into a takedown, and Jeremiah Wells was just controlling, but again, not landing any damage. Like, is no one from the commentators to the corners reading the rules of MMA and seeing how it's damage-based scoring? You've got to be laying damage, guys. You have to be. This ground game where we're just lying on each other and doing nothing is killing us, man. I get it that you got the sub, but it was a Hail Mary sub. You shouldn't have got that sub. You should have just lost that fight and just been chucked out of the UFC. Both of you should be chucked out of the UFC. Let's talk about Damon Jackson versus Billy Quarantillo. Now, this fight was a fun fight. This one, like, Thank God we had this one on the card. I mean, in the first round, somehow Damon Jackson was just putting hands on Billy Quarantillo and like really hurting Billy Quarantillo. Then in the second round, Billy Quarantillo just decides that he's gonna bite down on his mouth guard and make it a dirty, gritty fight. Fighting in the pocket, throwing hand, the body shots, he was tearing him up. And they ended up gassing out Damon Jackson. And Damon's coaches knew it. They started abusing him so much in that corner to get out there and have a bit more of that fire in him. They were really trying to wake up that fighter in the fighter, you know what I'm saying? But it was for nothing. That third round, do you guys remember Rocky 1, where Rocky is just beating up those slabs of meat? That's essentially what he did to Damon Jackson in the third round. It was brutal, man. Like by the end of this night, Damon Jackson's going to be going home with like less ribs than he has hair follicles on that forehead. Sorry, Damon. Thank you both so much for that fight. That fight was one of the better fights of the night. And the last fight that I wanted to talk about, guys, was Jake Hadley versus Cody Durden. First round, Durden elbows Jake Hadley and opens up this cut on his forehead, which is just pissing out blood during the first round. Like, it was savage. And for Hadley to stick in there and keep that fight going, man, really well done, especially with the way Durden was taunting him. Like, I really like Durden's personality after today. The dude was playing in the cage. And then we get onto that second round, where at first you think like, oh shit, Hadley's gonna be choked out. The scrambling happens. This sequence of scrambling in the first minute and a half, 2 minutes of the second round that's the kind of grappling BJJ ground game that gets me excited. People are throwing up sub attempts to create space and create situations where they can wriggle their hips and get out from underneath. Beautiful stuff. And Hadley was doing it just amazingly. Like, that is the kind of grappling that is a pleasure to watch. And then we get into that armbar attempt, and my God, it was one of those moments where I swear to God, I feel like I'm about to vomit. Like, I cannot keep watching. The arm is going to get ripped off. I feel like we were in that submission attempt for nearly 2 minutes. It was horrific. It was horrific. And somehow, Durden fights his way through it and gets to the end of the second round. It was incredible. The crowd was going nuts. I was going nuts. It was a sitting on my chair sort of a moment. And then, I don't know what happened, but Hadley just sort of gave up. I'm sorry to put it that way, but he sort of just quit. Like, there was no more fight left in him. He went for a sloppy takedown from range that Durden easily sprawled, and then Durden just sort of controlled, bit of peppering damage, like just did enough to win the third. He'd won the first, lost the second, wins the third, like, fair enough. Flips him off at the end, collects his paycheck, goes home. We all have a good time. I had a good time watching it. You know, working my way back through this card backwards probably explains why I'm so pissed off at the main event. Because it was like, good. Okay. Boring. And then we switch over to Diaz versus Paul, and that's like so fun. And you feel betrayed by someone that you love, which is the UFC. That's how it went down to me. But Hadley versus Durden, super fun fight. If you guys missed that fight, go back and watch that one. But that was it. That was this weekend's fight night. Weird week for the UFC. Weird night for the UFC. It is what it is. Guys, let me know down in the comments, how did you feel by the main event? A little bit betrayed? A little bit let down? I don't know. You know, I do feel like next weekend's fight night is still going to be fun. Vicente Luque versus Dos Anjos. That's going to be a scrap. There's actually a lot of good fights on that card that I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to talking about that one next week. But let me know your thoughts on tonight's card. What was your favorite fight of the night? What was your least favorite fight of the night? What do you want to see next for Sandhagen? If you've been enjoying these fights, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button down there, and I'll see you all in the next one.